For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. James 3:16. And that is the verse I'm going to be using to kickstart this video. Today I'm going to be talking about envy, especially as it relates to friendships and relationships in general. I'm going to be kind of relating it to my own personal life, my own lived experience, just to make it easier to understand. So let's begin. I'm not going to name this person's name out of respect, and I also don't want this to turn into a gossiping session. I'm just sharing my story so that hopefully other people can benefit and gain wisdom from it and learn from my mistakes and from my own experiences. So, I had a childhood friend who I used to be very close to as a kid. Like, we were actually like low-key raised as brothers. I mean, there's photos of us in the crib together, and we were only 5 months apart, or I think it was 3 months apart. Yeah, we were the same age and only 3 months apart. And we spent a lot of time together. I mean, a lot of time together. We did sleepovers. He would come over to my house and we would play basketball and, do a bunch of different, we had a whole bunch of different shenanigans going on as kids. Just a bunch of foolishness, hide and go seek and jumping up and down and thinking it was hilarious that we were making a bunch of noise every time we, fell on the floor and all that. But the thing about it is, looking back, is that this relationship it didn't have a strong foundation. Because our mothers, they sort of had their own type of relationship going on. Our mothers, they had their own relationship going on before we were born. And dynamics were already established. And unfortunately, we inherited that. There was like kind of undertones of like jealousy, envy, and secret competition and all that other stuff. Like, and when I say secret competition, I mean the type where someone will smile in your face, but behind closed doors, they're preying on your downfall. I'm sure every single adult has experienced somebody like this at least once in their lives. I mean, it's a work of the flesh. I mean, surely in a world full of people who are operating from the flesh, surely you have dealt with somebody who's at least been envious of you at least once in your life. But I digress. Anyways, given that there was this competition, it was like they kind of started to compare us with each other, and we were kind of like used in their little, game of competition and rivalry. And unfortunately, our friendship suffered. It was kind of like, oh, who is better at soccer, or who's better at spelling, who's better at academics, who goes to the best school, who has the best house, and unfortunately, we kind of got in the middle of that, and our friendship never really it was pretty much doomed before it began. How do I explain this without being revealing too much? One thing I will say though is that it wasn't obvious at first, because when you're a kid, all you really need to do is, like the same color or like the same sport or like the same activity to be friends with somebody. But then as you get older and your personalities start to develop, it becomes a bit more, like your standards start to change. Your values change and your priorities change, that sort of thing. So as I got older, I kind of started to see things for what they are. And mind you, I'm not going to say that our relationship was always bad. Like I said, when we were kids, it was actually pretty decent. Even though there was, subtle competition going on, especially between our mothers, it was actually not bad. I mean, like I said, we did the sleepovers and all that, and, he was low-key my closest friend back then. He did have my back on a lot of things, and he did help bring me out of my shell. I was, more on the shy side. I didn't really like talking to people, and he kind of got, that side of me out, like the side of me that was more sociable and all that. He kind of got that out of me sometimes, which was nice. I mean, and they did invite us to do a whole bunch of barbecues and all that. We did barbecues, we went to Wonderland together, and, sometimes I'd go watch him play soccer. He eventually did rep soccer. So and we used to play video games together. We used to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles together. It was fun. You know, I will say that he was a very important part of my childhood, and I'm not going to take that away from him. He was, like, I wouldn't go back and change it. I do think that he was a very important part of my childhood, because I didn't have siblings growing up, so he was kind of, you know, he was a good addition to my childhood. He really helped my childhood be more bearable. You guys know some of my story. If you want to know more, go back to my other videos. But as we got older, I just noticed like the little digs and the little things he would do that wouldn't sit right with me. It's like we used to play Naruto together, and right before I got there to his house, I noticed that on my screen, you know, on my side, like, you know, the two controllers? Yeah, on my controller, I just noticed that my character was taking damage a lot more than his character. So he kind of like sabotaged me. And mind you, that's not a big deal. Like, looking back, it's stupid. I mean, it's just a video game. But the thing is, you got to pay attention to those little moments too, because they're clues as to what's going on in somebody's heart, right? Because how often do we hear people say, the red flags were there, but I ignored them? That's why I don't, even if it's something small, I pay attention, because, you know, these could be clues to help you determine, or whether you could allow yourself to see the signs that God is showing you that this person is not a person that you need to have in your life anymore. So for me, I don't just go based off of one-time instance. I didn't just notice that and be like, okay, I don't want to be friends with him anymore. I mean, it's a video game. It was a series of patterns over time that I was noticing, and then that's ultimately what made me come to that decision, right? So, you know, it started off with things like that. And also, when we played basketball, he would hog the ball. You know, basketball is never really my sport. When I did used to play sports, I was more of a soccer guy. You know, I was very strong at defense on my school soccer team. That was more my vibe. Basketball, even to this day, I just, you know, basketball just has not, you know, I have a very poor relationship with basketball, but it was like he was just hogging the ball. He didn't really give me a chance. He was just kind of, you know, hogging the spotlight. Like, it was kind of like that episode from Fresh Prince with Will and Carlton. And mind you, I wasn't the Carlton in the situation. I wasn't mad that he was good at basketball. I mean, great, you're good at basketball. We all have our strengths. But it just kind of seemed like he was trying to kind of sabotage me in subtle ways. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. And, you know, it started off with stuff like that. Now, I will say that it wasn't completely one-sided. Sometimes I did indulge in the rivalry, like I said. We did inherit it from our mothers. But the dynamic between us was kind of the same. In my opinion, this is my opinion, and I'm not going to name names, but I do think most of the rivalry was on his and his mom's end. Mostly, I think the responsibility for the breakdown of those relationships mostly falls on them. That's my opinion. Sometimes we did indulge, but overall, I think my mom and I really did wish them well. We weren't the type of people to really compete with them like that. I mean, even though the competition was there, I just think it was mostly on their end, right? One incident I could think of is when we both went to the same summer camp back, you know, a long time ago. We were 10 years old. But, you know, we did this music thing, and his music video or whatever came out better than mine, and I honestly didn't handle that well. I will say I didn't handle that well. I was a little, my ego got involved in it, and I just said some very shady things. I will say that's where I missed the mark. Yeah, that was not good on my part. But I could admit that. I could admit when I'm wrong. But overall, I just think that, you know, he was never really happy for me. He would make comments like, oh, not all of our mothers are rich and can afford, you know, good clothes and all these video games and all that. Yeah, you know, just stuff like that. Like, you know, those little comments that people make that will let you know this person really doesn't wish me well, like that. And, you know, just bragging about the fact that he had Beats, and, you know, if he got like a new electronic, he would kind of like rub it in my face. One time he actually called me. He literally called me one time when he got something new for Christmas. And he's like bragging to me about it. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And he's like, are you deaf? I said I got X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like where is this coming from? Like, why are you talking to me like that? And that really upset me for the rest of the night. I was like, why would you, like, why are you acting like that? Like, yeah, you got the thing great. Like, good for you. I guess he was expecting me to have some reaction like he normally would when I get stuff. Because I'll give you guys another example. When I got the PS4 when it was new, like new back in 2014, and this was a big event, by the way, because the PS2 and the PS3 left a lasting impression on people, so people really had high hopes for the PS4. So when I got the PS4, it was big. Like, it was big back then. It was a big deal. And I remember he was hanging out for me. I got it for my birthday, and part of my birthday was he was gonna hang out with me, and I just remember not wanting to bring him back to my house because I knew that he was not gonna be happy about that. And that's another clue too. If you know that you can't talk about certain things like your achievements, especially with your friends, because you know they'll feel some type of way about it, is that person really your friend? Like, you really gotta ask yourself that. Is this person really on my side? Is this person really on my team? Is this person a person who's praying for me, or are they praying against me? And my mom actually did end up taking us back to the home because I guess she had to do something or whatever, and I just remember trying to steer her away from them, like, no, let's go over here instead. Like, but she's like, no, I have to go back to the house. I'm like, okay. Okay. So we did end up going to the house, and one of the first things I do is go to the kitchen to wash my hands, because I always wash my hands when I get in the house. And then I could feel the nasty energy emanating from the other room, because that's the room with the PS4 in it. And I'm like feeling this dread. I'm like, he saw it. It's gonna be a whole thing now. And then he's like looking at it. It's like dramatic. You would think that like somebody, stole his wife or something. Like, it was so dramatic. He was like looking at it like this, and like the dramatics. And he was huffing and puffing, and I'm like trying to play it cool and be like, hey, do you want something to drink? And he's like, no, I don't, with this forced smile on his face, but it looked like he wanted to punch me in the face. And I'm like, okay, great. And it was pretty awkward for the rest of the day. I mean, I knew he was going to be mad about it. And I was kind of trying to manage his emotions, which also isn't healthy in a relationship. You shouldn't feel like you have to manage other people's emotions and their reactions, because that's their responsibility, right? But I was still a kid. I was still learning these things. So I'm just as I talk about this, I'm kind of just trying to figure out the final straw. Although I think that's pretty much a big part of it. I think I started to check out. I was 14 at that point, so I think I started checking out of the friendship, like really just not taking it seriously anymore, when I was like maybe 15 or 16 years old. Like, I was a teenager. Like, in my mid-teens, I was like, you know what? This guy really doesn't wish me well. Like, and I didn't have the language back then, but I just knew, like, this is not right. Like, this is not a friend to me. Like, this is not my friend. Like, especially how his family has talked about us and treated my mom, and I'm not going to get too much into that, but there's other things that I could talk about too. They just did not like us. These are not people who want the best for us. They smile in our face, but they really don't have our back like that. And at that point, I was at that age now where I was no longer a kid. Like, being a friend was no longer just about liking the same sport or liking the same video game. Like, I began to actually value certain character traits in people. I began to notice things I didn't like in people. And that's ultimately why I decided to distance myself a bit, because I realized this is not a person who needs to be in my life like that. And there's another Bible verse I usually remember it by heart, but the specific Bible verse, so there's the one from 1 Corinthians 15:33. It says, do not be deceived, bad company corrupts good morals. And there's also Proverbs 26:24. It says, whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. Remember when I told you he smiled like this? at me, and he kind of pretended to be happy for me and all that, but really he was pissed off at me, and he was not really the type of person to wish me well. He'd make little digs and side comments which I didn't like. And that Bible verse says it all. It's like, this person pretends to have my back, but in reality they don't. So fast forward a bit, I was still a teenager at this point, and I invited him to my graduation party. Like, he was the only person that I invited, that because it was just a small get together with family, and at that point he was my childhood friend. Like, we literally knew each other since we were newborns. So I'm like, it was like muscle memory. My mom invited him, and I was like, okay, great. And I just remember he was making weird comments about me playing video games too often and all that, about my social life and all that. And mind you, there's nothing wrong with playing video games or playing, I was into Fallout 4 back then. Fallout 4 was still quite new. And it was like, dude, are you monitoring me on PSN? Are you monitoring my game time now? Is that what this is? That's weird. Weird. And his mother was making comments too about it. And, the thing about discernment is you don't always have a very obvious sign in front of you that these people are not, happy in the moment, but you could feel it. You could feel the energy in the air. Like, I didn't feel at ease in my spirit. Like, I just knew, like, are you guys really happy for me like that? Like, you guys are smiling at me, but I could sense undertones of, like, secret animosity or hostility. I'm like, what's up with that? So I think that was the final straw for me. I just, like, why do I have to worry about telling you my good accomplishments? Because I know it will make you upset. Like, at that point, I gotta ask myself, how is this person really my friend? Like, really, how is this person my friend? If I have to just edit out what I say or not tell them my good accomplishments because I know it will trigger envy or, anger in them. Like, how is that a friend at that point? So that's just my story to kind of tie into what I want to talk about, because I ended up, after my mom passed, I just changed my number and I was done with him. There was no big conversation. There was no big fallout. Like I said, there was no strong foundation. And then, when people die, your clarity and your tolerance for BS you have heightened amounts of, at least for me, that's what happened to me. Like, my tolerance for BS just went through the floor. And I'm like, do these people really have my back like that? No. So I just changed my number, and I didn't bother talking to them again. And to this day, I still have not lost sleep over that decision. It wasn't done out of cruelty. Like, I had to change my number anyway because I was getting a new phone and they told me I had to change. Actually, no, I didn't have to. At the counter when I was getting my new phone, they said, do you want to keep this number? Would you want to change it? And I said, you know what? I think I want to change it. And it wasn't about them, but it just happened to play out that way. I just changed it and I didn't give them my number. Because I'm like, these people weren't rocking with us like that. These people were not happy for us like that. And I kept trying to tell my mom, but I think the reason why she kept talking to his mom was because she didn't want me to lose that friendship. But I kept trying to tell my mom, these people do not like us. They are not our friends. Okay, and this happened well before, she passed. And, like, this happened when I was a teenager. I'm like, these people are not our friends. Stop trying to force us to hang out together. You know what I mean? Like, every time I hung out with them as I got older, it just felt more like muscle memory, like stuff and that's the thing, like, that's another lesson I had to learn. Just because you've known somebody for a long time, it doesn't mean that they have to be with you forever. Sometimes, some people are just meant to be in your life for a season or two, maybe 3, but they're not in it for the long run. And I think that was the case with our relationship. He really wasn't in it for the long run. Yeah. And I gotta be honest, it does kind of trigger me a bit talking about it, because even though I do see him as important, like, I am grateful for the role he had in my childhood. It does make me a little mad that I wasted time investing in that relationship with no, like, I didn't get to reap any type of positive reward from that. It just feels like I wasted my time. But it wasn't a complete loss, because like I said, my childhood, was more interesting because of him and his mom and what they did for us, and I'm grateful. But in the end, the relationship turned out not to be healthy because there was no strong foundation. And that's why when I did finally decide to stop talking to him, I really didn't feel bad about it, because it just felt right. It just felt like the right thing to do. When God removes people from your life, it's not always some big dramatic fallout. Sometimes it's just a shift, a quick shift in the other direction. And don't be surprised if they don't reach out to you, or you suddenly have this desire not to reach out to them. It's just the way it is. But I have prayed for him, though. I will say I have prayed for him. I genuinely wish him well. I genuinely hope that he fulfills his God-given purpose in life. This isn't about hostility. This isn't about getting even. I cannot stress this enough. I don't want people cutting off their friends, kind of trying to get one over on them, and don't do that. That's not what this is for. What I'm trying to communicate to people is, when you notice these signs of jealousy and envy, do not ignore them. The Bible has taught us this, like, even from going back to Cain and Abel days. Cain literally killed his own brother because of envy. Okay? And that same envious spirit is the reason why they had Jesus crucified. They didn't crucify him because they were trying to do right by God. They did it because they hated that he was doing all these miracles and he had all this fame amongst everybody, right? And that's what they were upset about. But, they tried to kind of make it look like they were doing it for righteous reasons, when really it was envy. And it just shows you how dangerous that spirit is. Like, it literally drives people to, unalive people in some cases. So when you do notice that spirit, don't ignore it, man. I'm telling you, don't ignore it. Like, I've learned the hard way, because this isn't even my only experience with envy in relationships. I've had people who did me dirty, and I think it's because of envy. And I don't want to be that and that's another thing. I think sometimes we gaslight ourselves because we don't want to seem conceited or full of ourselves. But when you know. At least for me. Because I always could sense when somebody has some type of secret animosity or jealousy or envy towards me, but I would ignore it because I wanted to see the good in them, and I also didn't want to seem like a stuck-up jerk. You know what I mean? But as I got older, I'm like, no, because the moment I get a whiff of envy and I'm noticing these patterns, I distance myself. Straight up, because I know how dangerous it can be. I mean, a good example would be Selena. In my opinion, I think the reason why she got, unalived was, I think it was the spirit of envy working through that woman that did it. And I'm sure there's other examples with celebrities or people that you may know where, something extremely horrible happened to somebody at the hands of someone else. It was probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was envy. So I just say this to say, really get into the habit of praying for God to expose and remove people who shouldn't be in your life. Like, that's a prayer that I pray every single day. And I literally tell God all the time, I don't care who they are, I don't care how long I've known them, I don't care if they're relatives. If this person has to go, remove them. Plain and simple. Because he knows people's hearts. He sees what we can't see. So if God is telling you that someone doesn't need to be in your life, listen. Okay, listen. Okay, don't. There's another verse in the Bible that says, a prudent man sees danger and hides himself, but the foolish go on and suffer for it. I don't remember which exact verse this is. Go look it up. But that one stuck with me because when you notice this thing, act. Okay, act. Don't make the same mistake I made, because it took me so many years to heal from the trauma, like that friendship trauma, like, that friendship betrayal where you think someone is your friend, but they're really not. And I'm not even just talking about necessarily the friend I was talking about for most of this video. Like I said, I've had other experiences too. And, I just remember it really messed me up for a while. I became more cynical. I became more miserable and bitter and resentful. It took me a long while to recover from that. And the signs were there. And that's why it took so long for me to recover, I think, because I wasn't necessarily angry at them. I was angry at myself because I knew that these people were no good. But I still continued to have them in my life anyway. That's why as an adult, I pay attention. I'm not gonna just let history or the fear of people judging me for my actions cloud my judgment. Because guess what? Those people that you're afraid are gonna judge you are not gonna be there to pick up the pieces when your heart gets broken, or when you develop trust issues, or when you struggle with bitterness and resentment trying to forgive these people. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. Just be very mindful of the company you keep. Be very mindful of the company you keep. And don't be scared of going through periods of solitude, because I think that's what keeps people in a lot of these toxic relationships, is that they're scared that they'll end up alone. But, you're gonna have to just go through that if that's what I'm not saying that's what will happen, but the alternative is you're just gonna get drained dealing with people that are not good for you, that are praying for your downfall, that are detrimental to your spiritual walk with Christ. Like, you can't let that fear of being alone for a time cloud your judgment. Because God has something better in store for you. One day you will meet people who are praying for you and not against you. One day you will meet people who will treat you right, who will not just tell you what you want to hear or give you bad advice to sabotage you, or who won't laugh when your plans fail, thinking you don't notice. One of my favorite verses in Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 8-24. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So just keep that in mind. If you're going through something right now where you've lost all your friends, or maybe you're dealing with friendship betrayal and you struggle to trust others, just keep those verses in mind. And those friendships that you lost, you didn't lose a thing. Okay? The way you should look at it is, you just got rid of something you just got rid of a person or people that were not filling your cup. You got rid of people who were taking from you, who were draining you, who were wolves in sheep's clothing. Okay, these people were not for you. You didn't lose anything. Okay? God just made room for the right people to enter your life, and he's not only just going to give you those people, he's going to prepare you so that you can be a good steward of those relationships. He's going to help you unlearn a lot of the patterns you learned from dealing with toxic people, whether it's people pleasing, codependency or enmeshment, and maybe sometimes you indulged in some of the competition as well, right? Maybe you have your own envious tendencies too that you need to work through. Whatever it is, just understand that God has better in store for you. So just try to stay the course, keep on praying, keep on hoping, and keep on having faith. Keep the faith. And remember, you didn't lose anything. Okay, you didn't lose those friendships, alright? And I cannot stress this enough. When you notice red flags, pray about it immediately. Immediately. Take it to the Lord. and ask Him to remove people from your life who, you know, harbor deceit in their hearts, but smile in your face. See what happens. God loves answering that prayer. It might hurt, but God is faithful, and He protects His own. He protects His children, so it might hurt in the moment, but one day you will grow to appreciate His protection. And not only that, you will have the wisdom from that. You will gain the wisdom from that experience to know how to move forward and how to move in your relationships going forward. You'll know what signs to look for. So it wasn't a loss, okay? It was a learning opportunity. It was preparing you for the real relationships that are meant to be in your life. Okay? And that being said, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed this video. And God bless you. In Jesus' name, amen.